In a previous video, I made a star in SVG, scalar vector graphics, using some JavaScript. And in this video, I'd just like to sort of generalize it a bit, make it a function and allow sort of various parameters in that function to be set. And so it's basically the same. So what we did previously was I use a polygon, and I have sort of I'm thinking of two concentric circles, and I'm going around and making a point on the outer circle, then one on the inner circle, then one on the outer circle, and making what I'm calling a star. And in that case, it was 5 points. So altogether, I had 10 points, 5 on the outer, 5 on the inner. So I'm going to make, and this one had, I started at an angle of -π/2. And so I'm going to make a number of these things of variables. So I'm going to make it a variable, how many points there are of the star. I'm going to make it a variable of what angle it starts at, where the star is centered, its center, horizontal center, and vertical center. What are this inner radius and outer radius, and then the fill and the stroke width. So I'm going to turn all of these things into not individual. Once I get inside, I'll be able to access them individually, but I'm going to sort of have like a JSON object that is going to, so I'm going to have one argument to this function, but it's going to be a very complicated argument with all of these parts. So this is a picture from what we made previously, but we're going to generalize it in this function. That's the purpose of what we're doing now. Okay, and this code can be found at this URL if you want to download it. Okay, so I start off in my basic HTML, and I have an empty SVG. So I'm not going to create the SVG and add it to the page. I've made the SVG, but I'm going to add polygon to it. So I have a function, and then I'm calling the function a number of times with different parameters to show about the different kind of stars I can make. So let's run it. So here we are. Here's the sort of original sort of 5-point star, but I can make a 3-point star, a 4-point star. Here's my 5, a 6, and a 7-point star. Okay, and I've done some varying of the angle it starts off. Certainly, I've done some varying of the centers and the colors. You can see the fills and the strokes and the stroke widths. So I'm changing all those things. Those are parameters in my function. Okay, so let's now look at this function, this sort of idea of using this sort of JSON object sort of here as the argument of the function I got from this Stack Overflow link here. Okay, so I have my function make a star. It's has one sort of argument, but that argument is this very complicated JSON object argument. And then within there, I'm declaring a number of attributes of this object. So I have the number of points, and it's going to be given a default of 5. So it's not always 5. This is the function. It's not always 5, but if I don't specify it, it will be 5. I'll have the center, horizontal center, the vertical center. I made them defaults of 50. I have an outer radius and inner radius. I gave them defaults of 20 and 10 respectively. I have a start angle of 0. This is in radians. and the default is 0, and the default fill is red, and the default stroke is blue, and the default stroke width is 3. Okay, and this was just a part of the code that I was copying. So I'm creating using create element NS a polygon. The polygon has an attribute of points, so that is, this array is going to be of the points that make up the polygon, and it's going to be a set of XY points. And so I'm setting them, I'm making an X and a Y. The fact that I'm setting them to 0 is irrelevant, because I'm going to change it before I add to my array. My generalization of my previous for loop, now my for loop goes up to, starts at 0 and goes up to, but not including 2 times the number of points. I have a start angle, and then I'm going to go up to 2 times the number of points almost. And so I'm going around like 2 pi radians is all the way around a circle. So I start wherever the caller of somebody down below, it will be me, but somebody uses my function, they supply a start angle, I start there, and I sort of walk around the circle. Okay, and then I'm doing this alternating thing of going between the outer circle and the inner circle. And you could, I didn't specify that one of the radii, that, you know, I in my mind, the outer radius is bigger than the inner radius, but the user of my function can do the opposite. Okay, but they tell me what angle to start at, and what's the inner radius and what's the outer radius, and it's alternating. So that's what this if does. I take the counter I divided by 2, take the modulus, take the remainder, and if it's 0, if I was an even number and the modulus is 0, then I use the outer radius. Otherwise, I use the inner radius. That's the alternating. I'm using the radius, and how does the math cosine to get the x, the math sign to get the y, and adding it to the center x and center y. And then when I get those points, I push them onto my array. Then when I'm done my loop, I push the whole set of points. I take my points array, and I join it, and then I make that the points attributes of my polygon. I use the fill to set the fill attribute, the stroke to set the stroke attribute, the stroke width to set the stroke one. So fill was fill and stroke was stroke, but it was here stroke dash width and here stroke underscore width. Okay, so there was things that I could not do. And then when I was done all of this, I didn't want it to be some stroke minus some width. That wouldn't make sense. So it had to be stroke underscore width or some other variable name, but that's the variable name I chose. When I'm all done, I'm returning the polygon. So the function doesn't add the polygon. It makes the polygon element. It does not add it to the page. The user of the function is responsible for that. Okay, so here is the first time I'm calling the function. So the first time I'm calling the function, I'm making the 5-point star in that 250, 250 with an outer radius of 100, inner radius of 50. I'm starting it. This is a minus pi on 2. Which was a line with a purple stroke of width 3. So that's what I had made before, and then appended to my SVG. So that's the 5-pointed star with the lime green. But just to show this, now that it is so generalized, I can make a 7-point star. This is sort of relatively smallest center X of 100, but a large center Y. And so that's down here, this 7-point star down here. And it was the fill of red and the stroke of blue. And there is me adding it. Here's a 3-point star with a small x and a small y. So that was up there, and it was blue and cyan. Blue and cyan. Here's a 4-point star with a large x and a small y. That's the one over here, which was green and yellow. And we had the 6-point star, which was a large x and a large y. So that is down there. That's the orange and the blue. And then I added all those. Now let me just show the default one. So, and I'm going to, I have right now it commented out, but I'm going to take that out and save it. And I didn't have to refresh, but I could have, but I didn't have to. Here is that little default star, which was a red filled, blue, small, 50-50. So that was the default. I didn't supply any of the parameters, just sent an empty one and got that. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you, this sort of generalization, turning that previous example of a 5-pointed star turn it into a function with a bunch of general parameters, and getting other types of stars out of it. That's what I wanted to show you. Thanks for your attention.